All right, well, we're back again. I guess we have to mend some fences here, given all the conspiracy theories about how we've had a falling out, how we received cease and desist
letters. That's my favorite.
Cease and desist letters from certain factions within Jiu-Jitsu. What were some of the other things that had gone wrong?
Well, we had a spectacular falling out, and therefore you were no longer able to sell the material because I was a participant in it.
Mm-hmm. Was there any flat Earth stuff there? I'd wandered off in my recent travels to Switzerland. I'd actually discovered the ice wall.
Oh yeah. So you've been disappeared by the Illuminati,
exactly.
Or sorry, NASA. We got
it. Well, they're same thing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, nothing but shape-shifting lizards down there at Houston.
Yeah.
Houston, they have a problem. Well, one of the things I want to start out with here is your visiting student program, because that's pretty unique. I mean, on the surface, it's like, come and train with you for free.
Yeah. Not just on the surface. Once you start digging, it's still just come and train with me for free.
Okay.
There's no catch. I guess that's the best way to sort of broach the subject is, we've touched on this in a previous podcast. I've lived a extremely fortunate life. I basically haven't had a real job as an adult for the most part, other than a little bit of bouncing very early on, and that's not a real job. A job that you do at midnight with drunk people is not a job. So I've been extremely fortunate.
Chicks going, oh, you're the bouncer.
Yeah, exactly.
What percentage of bouncers are there just for the chicks?
Damn, that's an excellent question. I don't know what the demographic is now. I can tell you back when I did it, a very strong selling point was, hey, you make some extra money, it's all cash, and by the way, the chicks. Yeah. So
cash money
and chicks were the two big selling points. Okay. Yeah.
All right, sorry, I got distracted there.
No.
Okay, back to fortunate life.
Yeah, so
no job.
Yeah, exactly. So I've the only reason that I can have an academy the way that I do now, the reason that I've been able to train with so many great people, it's all due to generosity on the part of my mom and very good friends of mine, but not just friends of mine, people that I've just tangentially met throughout my jiu-jitsu travels who've been really kind and generous with me. So since I opened my academy, which was in 2012, I've had this visiting student program.
Right from the beginning?
Right from the beginning, just because it was something that I just believed in it. And things nobody knew who I was. Right. So at the time we would get, we'd get 1 or 2, maybe 3 visiting students a year. And at first it was overwhelmingly people I knew who had trained with me. And then it started to become people who met us at tournaments. Like our first sort of international visiting student. First visiting student that was somebody who wasn't a friend of mine or someone who knew me from previous training was a guy from Seattle who met us at a tournament, and he ended up actually calling me up about a week later and was like, hey, I've seen a couple of your videos on YouTube. You have a really unique way of presenting jiu-jitsu. I'm really interested in coming up and training with you. And he didn't know about the visiting student program. I was like, oh, well, funny you should ask, because I actually, if you want to come up, feel free. You can come. You can stay with me for a week. You can train for free for a week. And if you need, I'll pick you up from the ferry. Or I'll pick you up from the airport, whatever. And he did end up coming up. And when we were sitting around chatting, he's like, I gotta tell you, when I told my wife that I called you up and you were like, hey man, come on up, train for free. And she was
what kind of cult are you going to join?
It wasn't even what kind of cult. She's like, are you sure this guy isn't gay and hitting on you? And then the flip side to it was some of my students were like, so this guy met you at a tournament and he wants to come up and are you sure he's not gay? So we got
lots of gay phobia.
Yeah, there's exactly. So once I had, once he came over and he visited and I told him my story and why it is that I offer this, he's like, oh, well, now it makes perfect sense. And so, he was the first guy, and we would get a few people here and there, and then obviously the BJJ formula thing came out, and then some other videos with me came out, and my notoriety.
And you made that offer.
And I made it. Yeah, I made that offer in it. It's if you go on my website, there is a page dedicated to the visiting student program. So it's not something that we're at all trying to hide. It's something that we're very proud of. I want people to come and visit.
All right, so what's the deal? Can 10 people descend on you at the same time?
Right, so here, let's get to the nitty gritty. So I have a home that has 2 guest bedrooms. I try to keep those bedrooms free. For the last year, I've had a visiting student in residence of one kind or another. So I had someone staying with me for 8 months. I now have someone else that's been staying with me for the summer. So the one bedroom is kind of reserved generally for visiting students and residents. And then we have the second bedroom, which has 2 beds in it, and I actually just bought a bunk bed. So we've hosted as many as 5 people at once. I don't want to do that on a regular basis. So generally speaking, we can host 1 or 2 people really comfortably. And so I usually reserve, because I do travel, I teach seminars, there's tournaments, stuff like that, and I do also need to have my house to myself every once in a while. So I do reserve 1 or 2 weeks out of any given month, depending on what's going on, for just like my free time, and then the other 2 weeks are available, 1 or 2 weeks, again, depending on the month, are available for visitors. Right. So if you can find your way to Nanaimo, which is on Vancouver Island, which...
No. If people can get in touch with you first.
Sure, yes, sorry. If people can get in touch with me first and book a spot, and then they can find their way to Nanaimo. I will host them in my home for a week. All you got to do is pay for your food. I am not going to feed you, and I'm sure as hell not going to cook for you. So bonus if you can cook. If we got a pretty long waiting list. If you want to skip the list, you tell me you cook for me. But the idea is just if you give me enough notice and we've got the available spot, I'll host you for a week. I will pick you up from the ferry or the airport if you don't have a vehicle, and you can attend classes for free at the academy, any class, all the classes, whatever you like.
So why do you do this? I mean, this is contrary to the business model of 99.99% of academies.
Yeah, I mean, the major reason is, honestly, I do feel a personal moral responsibility. I think there's a... what's the phrase? It's when you get to the top floor, it's your responsibility to send the elevator back down. And I really do believe that. I've been successful. There's a mythology about the self-made man in North America and the United States. This idea that someone who comes from nothing by sheer force of will, despite all opposition, with no help whatsoever from anybody, becomes a master of the universe.
It's a good story.
It's complete and total horseshit. There's nobody anywhere of any level of success that didn't have someone help them out somehow, some way, where they weren't put in a fortunate circumstance that they absolutely took advantage of with hard work and all that. And I'm not trying to discount that in any way.
No, hard work counts.
Hard work counts probably more than anything else.
Right.
But absent the opportunity, you can work really hard and you'll only reach a certain level.
Tell that when people go on about this. Well, we're like 5 minutes in and we're all already going off on a tangent.
Yeah.
When people go on about that, I'm a self-made man. I've created myself de novo from my bootstraps. I'm like, screw you. Tell you what, we're going to make you a black African child in the middle of some village in Swaziland.
Yeah.
Your mother's got AIDS. Your dad is dead. And you've got 12 siblings.
I mean, let's face it. The people who claim this are of a particular political disposition, who have reality doesn't cut through their dogma. You can find it, I'm sure.
Well, even just being here in North America is a starting. Like we're so lucky to be here.
Absolutely.
Or the Europeans can probably also be.
There's
lucky.
an interview with a guy named Craig T. Nelson, who's an actor, and he's being. I can't remember who's interviewing him, but he's like, no one ever gave me a helping hand. I was on welfare. I was on food stamps. No one ever gave me a leg up.
You were on welfare. You were
on food stamps. Exactly, but it's like again, like the
Swaziland doesn't have welfare.
This is what I'm saying. No matter what, if you have succeeded greatly in life, it has been because there's been an opportunity that's been given you. You absolutely had to do everything you possibly could to take advantage of that opportunity.
Sure.
Right.
Yes. We're not on no account. Are we discounting?
Exactly, but I think it bears saying because we've drifted off of Jiu-Jitsu topics in the past in podcasts and been accused of being of a particular political ilk because of it, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's just that people on one side of a political spectrum, if they hear an opinion that doesn't agree with theirs, they assume it could only come from the other side of the political spectrum. Right. So I just want to hammer that point home.
So you are grateful because of the opportunity.
I'm grateful because I was given opportunities in Jiu-Jitsu by Jiu-Jitsu people and by people who were willing to support my hard work, my going out and training with different people and dedicating myself.
So for example, who are you grateful to in Jiu-Jitsu?
I'm grateful to Charles McCarthy, my coach when I was training at American Top Team. Extremely grateful. I'm grateful to Marcelo Silveira, who's another coach of mine in Florida. I'm grateful to my friend Vito, who let me stay in his home for free for basically what amounts to, over the course of time, a couple of years, while I pursued training in Jiu-Jitsu, right? These are people who, they owe me nothing. I didn't save their life or anything like that, and they're just good people. They're amazing people. I'm grateful. I owe a debt of gratitude to Richie Yip. Richie Yip, having met me once for an hour and a half when I was teaching a seminar, took it upon himself to take a look at my website and tell me what I could do better and mentor me in business in a way that was so extremely helpful, because I was reaching a point of frustration where I felt like I was a very good teacher, but I just couldn't get the commensurate business results.
Right.
And
black belt in jiu-jitsu, white
belt in business, totally. And so Richie helped me out. Richie introduced me to you, right? So I'm grateful to you. Like I could really go on and on. I'm grateful to my mom, who's not a jiu-jitsu person, but none of what I do would be possible without her. So yeah, there's just so many people that have helped me out. Mm-hmm. Again, like, I can't give my millionaire friend a few $100 for rent at this point. It doesn't matter. So the best way that I can see to pass on that gratitude is to basically take people who are in the same situation that I was in, which is, are you willing to travel, and are you willing to? And that's because to anticipate a potential question. What's your filter? How do you how do you decide whether or not someone, like, honestly, if somebody is willing enough to get on a plane or drive a couple thousand miles to some island in Canada with some autistic dude who's going to ramble about frames and levers, and they feel like that's going to help their jiu-jitsu and they're willing to do it, then I'm absolutely willing to host them and bring them into my home and bring them into my academy.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever had that go sour on you? Like, you have an open door policy, kind of, sort of.
I pretty much do. I mean, a few people have now advised me, like, hey, when someone emails you, can I come over? Don't just go yes. Ask them a few questions. And I do that now. But yeah, the experiences have been 99% positive, and there was one negative experience with somebody who, if I'm honest, I don't think they actually knew who I was. They weren't seeking out, Rob Biernacki, I'm going to go to his visiting student program. I think they were just visiting the island anyway, and they did jiu-jitsu, and someone told them, hey, this guy will let you sit. Oh, great. And, I have a particular...
A free place to sleep.
A free place to sleep, yeah, basically. I think they were in it for the free place to sleep, because they certainly weren't in it for my teaching, because my teaching, and it wasn't even the first class that they attended, it wasn't even me. It was one of my assistant instructors. The second class was me, and they were so mortally offended by some of the language that they just decided this was not the place for them.
Someone found you offensive?
Yeah, exactly. Oh. Go figure, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But it must have just been absolutely so innocent.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've mocked people who use the word snowflake, because it's now it's just a word for anybody who is offended by something you said. But I mean, really, this was somebody who was, I can be pretty severe in terms of non-politically correct language, in terms of making off-color jokes. The atmosphere at my academy is incredibly relaxed and jocular. It's incredibly friendly. Like, everyone who's come through has been really surprised by how personable people are. This interview format brings out my kind of cerebral, sarcastic, pompous side. I do also have a very friendly, engaging. If you're in my academy, there's no extent to which I won't go to try to teach you and make sure that you get what's going on. I also call people retards. I also make off-color jokes, and there's we are very comfortable with the idea that we can say whatever the hell we want. Everyone gets to swear. There's none of the, I've had to, occasionally when I teach seminars, people are like, Rob, we know how you teach, but if you come to my academy, can you do me a favor and not say the word fuck over, and I can do it. But in my academy, it's my safe space. Yeah, my academy is my safe space, so I get to say what I want. And so we have had one incident with somebody who was completely unprepared for that atmosphere, and it's a shame. And so now I do it because I really do want everyone who comes to have a great experience, and
listen to at least one podcast with me before you come.
Exactly. Get some idea of what I'm like as an instructor. Watch some of the material that I put out, because it's not for everybody. Some people obviously just think that I use too many big words. B,
I use too many small words.
I used to, exactly. But you can't please everybody.
4-letter words.
Yeah, I would like to think that my market, if there is one, is people who are kind of cerebrally inclined, people who obviously the idea of systems and conceptual instruction appeals to them, and like nerds, like basically nerds are my market, and also people who frankly don't take themselves too seriously. They have a little bit of sense of humor about training. If I'm the sort of person that appeals to you as an instructor, then great, come and visit. We'd love to have you. And we've overwhelmingly had wonderful responses. Like we have now returning visiting students, people who regularly, several times, couple times a year, however often they can make it out, they come back. And so we're cultivating this wonderful network of people that are learning the methods that we're trying to espouse, and we're now I have a place to stay. So if I go somewhere and someone's like, hey, well, you hosted me at your house. If you're ever coming through North Carolina, or if you're ever in New York, if you're gonna come to California, whatever, hey, you can crash with me, which is really great because hotels are expensive. So yeah, it's been nothing but beneficial. And then the other immense benefit is to my students. And I try to, or at least I like to think, I'm sure it's not every decision, but I like to think that the majority of my decisions are based around the idea of what can I do to create the best possible learning environment for my students. And to that extent, we are geographically isolated. A, we're on an island. B, we're in a town where there's, again, I always piss people off when I talk about this, but there is no other legitimate source of jiu-jitsu. Like there's one other school, and they're very low level. And again, if you're just a hobbyist and you don't care, you train once or twice, it doesn't matter. But they also actively discourage people from ever, treading through our doors. And the same is frankly true on the island to a certain degree. There are several schools that are run by not the most qualified people, and it's in their best interest to tell their students to not go anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So
usually that's the case. Like usually it's the lower skilled people that are completely disparaging of
totally
training. Although you do run into
some old school guys who, but overwhelmingly, it's people who have a somewhat legitimate. Although again, if you got to realize how many people, especially if you're a blue belt or a purple belt in a small town somewhere, and you're the source of jiu-jitsu for people, how many of those people are going to drive 45 minutes or an hour out of their way to go train with a black belt? They're already not doing it. There are, I'm not the only black belt on the island. There are a few black belts now. You can go somewhere and you can get legit training. But that's not how they think of it. Obviously, there's that scarcity mindset. If they see what else is out there, they're going to go away. And so we're starting to get some visitors. There are, again, oddly enough, the people who come and visit me from the island are people who train with black belts, are people who train with people who are secure in their skill set. And they don't care if their students come and visit another black belt. The same way that I not only don't care if my students go, I actively, A, encourage them to do it, B, I'm on record as saying, I will pay your drop-in fee. Go to any school you want, I will pay your drop-in fee because I absolutely want you to experience what else is out there. So because we don't get a ton of people coming from other clubs, it's a pain in the butt for them to get to Vancouver, although I do take my students, I bring them over here. You've met several of my students. I always try to bring my students. I bring my students to California so that they can train at Coyoteras or anywhere else that we go. But the majority of my students can't do that. And so having this program, we get to see people from Australia and Europe and all over North America and different styles and different ranks and different body types. And so we just get a cross-section of training partners that are incredibly valuable because some of your best training experiences are, if you're not going to compete especially, are a strange person with a different rolling style. And now, what do you do? Because we all know each other. Everyone knows what I'm going to do. Everyone knows what Rory's going to do. It's totally different training with somebody that you haven't trained before.
Yeah, especially no-gi, because now you've got no frame of reference. Like any idiot can go buy a fancy rash guard and a pair of foot shorts.
Yeah.
You and I can sum up pretty quickly when we're going against somebody. Like, oh, this guy actually knows how to move.
Yeah.
But without the belt, without the gi and the belt, it's hard to have that initial reference frame. Like, how seriously should I take this role?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. So like I said, it's again, other than the one, and I'm sure on a long enough time scale, someone's going to visit that's not going to be a great person.
Right.
But I have overwhelmingly, and I I'm a very introvert. Like obviously, I ramble a lot. I talk a lot. All anyone has ever seen of me on the internet is a guy who talks constantly. So it's probably hard to imagine that I'm actually a pretty introverted person for the most part. If you don't get me talking about jiu-jitsu, I actually don't really. I'm pretty asocial. I won't say that I'm antisocial, but I'm asocial. I don't really like to put myself in situations like that. And having said that, everyone that I've met through this visiting student program, I've gotten along with great. You know, again, if somebody cares enough about jiu-jitsu that they're going to travel and they're going to seek something like this out, they're going to be interesting people. They're going to, you know, people who are more well-traveled, people who are curious about the world and about experiences in the world are generally interesting people. And we've had some fantastic conversations. You know, I have a couple of students who I just absolutely, you know, they're returning visiting students, and I absolutely love having them there. Just aside from the training aspect, because we're going to stay up till 2 a.m. and we're going to talk about ideas,
right?
Which is, you know, incredibly intellectually stimulating. Like I just had a physicist from the UK visit, a theoretical physicist, and
how were his arm bars?
You know, like he was a relative beginner to jiu-jitsu, and very much the same way that he felt like, oh, I thought I had a handle on this jiu-jitsu thing, and then I went and I trained with you. I was like, man, I think I got a little bit of a handle on this physics thing. And then he started telling me what he was working on, and I was like, all right, can you start again, please?
What was he working on?
So he's working on emergent properties, which I felt ecstatic when he started to give me the explain it like I'm 5 version of what he was explaining. I was like, oh, so you work on emergent properties? Like, oh, you know what emergent properties? Like, oh man, I am so smart. And then he started explaining what he worked on. I was like, nope, start again. Nope, start again. Okay, but hang on a second. He's like, no, you're right. It's a paradox. So he was explaining to me, you know, anyway.
No, it's my podcast.
Okay.
I want to talk about emergent properties.
Okay, so if I told you that they're like, what are the states of matter?
Solid, liquid, gas, and then there are some other weird ones.
So that's what exactly. It's like the solid, liquid, and gas. So solid, liquid, and gas. He goes, honestly, at this point, shouldn't even really be taught that way because it's not that anymore. So there's solid, liquid, gas. There's plasma, and then and he's like, so what is toothpaste? And I'm like, I mean, I guess I would say it's a liquid. And he's explaining. He's like, no, it's not. So gel is now a state of matter. And what they're working on is that when you look at certain structures, glass and plastic in particular, on a molecular level, they appear as a liquid even though they're a solid. And they've just been trying to figure out how that's possible, and the answer has to do with either 0 or near 0 level of entropy. And I can't explain it because it's so far above my head. And again, like, wherever in life would I ever have the opportunity to have a theoretical physicist in my kitchen explaining to me what's going on? And I mean, I've never been happier to be the dumbest guy in the room. Then I was like, I wish the guy was there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because I could have just sat there and listened to him the whole time. So yeah, like I can't speak highly enough about the program.
So it's an advantage to you.
It's an advantage to me, yeah. So like I definitely don't want to try to present it like I'm doing something wholly altruistic, because I'm definitely not. You know, like as much as like I certainly believe in altruism on a certain level, I don't believe in self-sacrifice. I'm not going to go to great cost to me just to, you know, appease a stranger. I don't think that's any way to go about living. I think it's a terrible way to structure a society. So yeah, it's only altruistic in the sense that I'm not gaining monetarily from it. But in every other way, you know, whether it's intellectual enrichment, whether it's creating greater resources for my students, whether it's you know, establishing a network of really interesting people, it's all good.
It's win-win.
It's win-win-win. Yeah.
So you said you've had everybody, but from Africa.
Yeah, so we've got a map at my place, and I actually, like, I don't know if I mentioned that, but I actually bought a bigger home this year just so I could expand this program, right? So I had a condo, and it got to be a bit of a frat house where there would be like an inflatable bed in my living room. And so, you know, now I've got it's a 3-story place, and it's got separate areas where I can actually have my privacy and all that. So the
Your fortress of solitude.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sorry.
Well, where have you had people from?
Right. Yes. So we've got a map in our home. Yeah. And we've checked off South America. We've all over North America, a bunch of different states. We've checked off Europe. We've checked off Asia and Australia recently. And so now we're just waiting for Africa and Antarctica, which.
So if you're from Antarctica,
you can skip the list. Like, you can come next week.
Yeah.
I'll find a place for you. I'll give you my bedroom and I'll stay at my mom's place, whatever it takes. We would like to have, just kind of a silly goal. I'd like to have people from literally everywhere in the world. I was disappointed to find out that Saudi Arabia doesn't qualify as part of Africa, because I did recently have a visitor who's originally Canadian but was living in Saudi Arabia. So
I get a lot of emails from people in Morocco. So I bet Morocco will be you get your African or South Africa. South
Africa, yes. I love that accent, by the way.
So South Africa
Yeah.
or Morocco, I bet will be your.
I hope so. Yeah. I got a very interesting email from a gentleman who is from the United States but living in Africa, who's a missionary of all things, and
he was in touch with you
because of the BJJ formula. He said when he got called to Africa, he figured his jiu-jitsu learning was going to be over, and he actually he purchased this material, and because he's so intellectually inclined, he derived, I guess, tremendous benefit from it, enough so to email me and
how's he training?
I guess he's just finding a couple people and kind of doing jiu-jitsu on them. Yeah.
So something I haven't got a chance to ask you yet.
Yes.
I remember a certain conversation that you were telling me about, that you were having with somebody who wanted some details about the foot positioning for a certain leg lock. Was it leg lock? Was it 50-50? This foot on face?
Oh, yeah. So this, apropos of people who have come my way because of you. All of them.
Just wait till the leg lock thing hits.
Yeah.
But it has hit.
Yeah, all of them have been really great. There was one guy who started asking about foot position. And
in what context?
It was one of the videos that we put out. It might have been 50-50. I honestly can't remember. And so he asked me one question, and just the question seemed off. And then he sent me another message, and I answered it relatively honestly, because I just asked him for more info. I'm like, well, hang on, what do you mean? And he started rambling about his sensei, and they do the foot-to-face technique. And it was just, alarm bells for this guy's either a troll or a complete idiot. And in either case, I'm going to have fun with him. So I replied to him, and I said something to the effect of, I sent him a link to a video. I said, I think that this is probably the answer you're looking for. And the video was Rick Astley singing, "Never Gonna Give You Up." So I rickrolled him. And I don't think he clicked on the link because he's like, why do you say? I'm like, well, it's because my old sensei, Mr. Astley, told me that I'm never going to give up.
Yeah.
Never going to. So the guy didn't have, and then later on he sent me a couple more requests, I just need any video with your foot on the face, it's foot to face, I'll pay. And so I clicked on his profile on YouTube, whatever, and god damn it, the guy was a foot fetishist. So it had nothing to do with martial arts. It was nothing, he was trying to get me to do an ersatz foot fetish video for him without actually just coming out and saying, look, I'll give you money, do a foot fetish video. So, yeah.
That was your first foot fetish video request?
That was my first and only so far.
Well, I am very glad to have facilitated that in my own small way.
Yeah.
I remember this was in the early days of Grapple Art, somebody emailed me and said, hey, would you like a wrestling singlet? All I would need is some photos. And so I was like, no, I don't. I'm totally happy with t-shirts and rash guards and board shorts. But then just something was off again. So I went to his site, and it was basically a fetish, Greco-Roman, Greco-Roman, wrestling singlet purchase thing. So all these super buff guys, vaguely in wrestling postures, dressed in his singlet. I'm like, oh, I'm very glad I dodged a bullet there.
Yeah. Well, actually, apropos of the visiting student program, actually,
the conversation has officially gone sideways.
Yeah,
gentlemen.
Well, I mean, we'll drag it back to sexual fetishes gladly in a minute. I did get one request from a guy after I think the first podcast that we did, where the guy's like, "Hey, I want to come out and I want to train with you." I was like, "Oh, great! Email me and we'll set it up." And he emailed me. He's like, "Yeah, the only thing is." I don't really have any money because I'll be damned if I ever work for the man. So, if you could just pay for my flight and I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm a generous enough guy, but I'm not stupid. Yeah. At least not that stupid. And
it's not Svetlana on an internet dating site saying she would surely love to come to Canada if she would just pay for her flight.
Exactly. I'm trying to be a good guy here, and I'm trying to create a benefit for my students a lot. I am not funding your lazy ass to come and train with me and move in and live and all this kind of stuff.
So you can work for the man to pay for his flight.
To pay for his flight, yeah, exactly. So yeah, in case anyone mistakes my generosity, no, I'm not going to pay for your flight.
Yeah. Just to drag it back to
the foot fetish, please.
Well, no, I don't have any foot fetish stories, but every year or two, I get an email. I think the last one was from some Eastern European chick who took photos of herself in the cheapest underwear you can imagine.
Sure.
And was stuff that would make Walmart seem classy.
Okay, I'm genuinely curious now as to what that looks like.
And it was accompanied with a request to come live with me and serve me.
Sure.
And how she was very, very interested in martial arts, but she was also a beautician.
Yep.
And an esthetician. So sadly that went unanswered. I should have a file somewhere for all the completely crazy emails.
Yeah,
if I kept track of them for the last 15 years that I've been doing grapple arts, I would have an excellent collection of
it's funny because
humor.
Obviously the visiting student program, being a jiu-jitsu program where you're coming to a guy's house, is overwhelmingly guys. But especially in the last year or so, we've actually had quite a few women come. One of my returning regular visiting students, my visiting student in residence for this summer was a woman. We recently had 4 women come up from California. And so that's actually something I instead of getting the Russian mail order bride solicitations, we're actually getting a really cool group of women that are coming up, and we have
they all train jiu-jitsu
already. They all train jiu-jitsu already, and we've got a really good group of women that train with us at my academy, which took a really long time. It's hard to get women to train jiu-jitsu. It's almost one of those things unless you have a woman in the class that's there often enough that anytime another woman comes to try out the class, it's hard to get the ball rolling. But now we do. We've got a really good contingent of really talented, awesome women that train, and then we've now created this environment where women feel comfortable coming and visiting, which is really awesome because I'm a big supporter of that.
I had a theory for a long time that submission grappling would never take off for women, that it would be jiu-jitsu with the gi.
Yeah.
But I think that's wrong. I think it's demonstrably wrong.
Yeah, the women that came and visited from California, they did all no gi.
Yeah.
They didn't. One of them trained a little bit in the gi here and there, but they overwhelmingly were interested in the no gi stuff.
No.
Yeah.
So what do you think it is? My theory was that just the additional layers of cloth and protection between bodies. It's kind of a weird thing, go and mash yourself up against a guy. And
I agree, and I if I start speculating on this, I'm going to offend more people. I honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. Certainly the fact that it's a workout and you don't have to get, if we really want to talk about the appeal of no-gi, the appeal of no-gi, certainly in some circles, for some people, is the idea that it's more self-defense oriented. I don't agree with that, mind you, because I certainly think there's a ton of validity to the gi as a training tool for self. Anyway, I don't want to get into that stupid debate.
Sure.
But I think if you are of the mentality that no-gi jiu-jitsu gives you a more reliable form of self-defense, I do think that for women much more so than for men. As a guy, you can do jiu-jitsu for a lot of reasons. self-defense doesn't have to be one of them. And certainly as a woman, it doesn't have to be one of them. But realistically, if you're a 200-pound guy and you're in pretty good shape, the odds that you will ever need to defend yourself
against someone who's twice your
against
size.
somebody who's bigger than you, exactly, against someone that you can't already probably handle with, either 6 months of boxing or 6 months of jiu-jitsu or any like legitimate contact-based martial art. Those odds are really slim. If you're an intelligent human being, if you can use your brain a little bit, if you can, just avoid trouble, there's no reason for it. I shouldn't say there's no reason, but it's unlikely. So if you are training for self-defense, know that you are training for a very unlikely possibility.
Sure.
And depending on where you live, you'd be probably better off just getting a concealed carry permit and getting a handgun, like realistically, or just learning how to knife fight or something. Like, if we want to talk about self-defense, like really where it's like a mugger and your life is on the line, man, you should have a weapon. That's not always possible, so in that case, jiu-jitsu absolutely is your best bet. But for a woman, let's look at the statistics. If you're going to be assaulted as a woman, it's much more, especially sexually assaulted, it is far, far more likely that you're going to be assaulted by someone you know,
right,
rather than a rapist jumping out of the bushes. Like it
happens,
it's silly,
but it's rare,
and it's a silly, fear-mongering way of promoting it. But the odds that you will have to restrain a unduly aggressive male that is either an acquaintance or a friend or whatever are significantly higher. Again, they're not as high as people who sell this stuff from a fear-mongering kind of aspect. Again, depending on where you live, depending on the statistics are still fairly low. We live in an incredibly safe society. If you want to talk about fake news, let's talk about how ridiculous it is that people think that our society is so dangerous when, statistically speaking, violent crime has been going down
it's
and
safer
down.
Than it's been.
Safe. We live in the safest society in human history, in the safest time in human history.
Yeah.
Anyone who believes otherwise is watching fake news.
There are local exceptions.
Of course. If you live in Detroit,
or in Syria,
of course. But in general, like if you live in Canada, if you live in, many of the cities in the United States, if you live in places in Europe, but again, within those pockets, there are extremely dangerous areas, and within the demographics of that, if you're a woman, you are in a position where you will, again, with much greater likelihood or frequency, be faced with potentially having to, again, not to the point of like having to kill someone, but just, hey, drunk Uncle Ted. Yeah, get your fucking hands off me. Drunk Uncle Ted at the family barbecue. So again, what's the answer to that? The answer is jiu-jitsu. The answer isn't Muay Thai. The answer isn't boxing. The answer, no, it's none of those. Because there are legitimate, you have options for self-defense martial arts. They're all combative and they all include sparring. And any of the other ones are nonsense, but for like pure self-defense. But within that context, if you need to restrain somebody, it's jiu-jitsu. And so,
or get away from somebody who's grabbing you.
Yeah. So you do, like as a woman, if you're going to take it and you believe, God, this was a long way of looping back around to it, and if you believe that no-gi is the way to go.
We've offended every single person. There's nobody listening anymore.
Exactly. So at that point, if you believe that no-gi is the way to go, then I can absolutely see how the strength of that appeal lies.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and I think also there are lots of examples. You don't have to be on the internet for very long to see lots of examples of women grappling now. And Ronda Rousey in the UFC was again a trailblazer, regardless of whether you liked her or not.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Still a very visible woman doing a combat sport that involved grappling and that she was particularly good at.
Yeah.
So I think there are a whole host of sort of role models and examples out there now.
Jiu-jitsu is growing pretty rapidly, I think, in general. And with that is going to come more exposure for various demographics, and it's great that there's more exposure to it for women, because it's a shame when somebody does fall for the nonsense martial arts as far as self-defense. And in general, unfortunately, women tend to be less educated about this because women, on a percentage basis, aren't into fighting.
Yeah.
Guys are more into fighting, and so they are more likely to be knowledgeable, although again, there are many, many guys who believe in death touch nonsense, urban combatives, whatever kind of stuff that doesn't actually work in a fight. My favorite, we gotta go on this tangent. In my inbox somewhere, somebody sent me this. Alpha Strike.
I've never heard of Alpha
Strike.
What is Alpha Strike?
Alpha Strike is a product that is promoted by known fraud, Ari Bolden, teaching you secret commando killing techniques, but That's not all.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. You know how some men just reek of alpha masculinity? They just walk into a room and, panties start dropping. That is part of the pitch.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
So self-defense.
Self-defense.
Female pickup.
Never mind this, getting a black belt in a legitimate martial art, which I'm not surprised he says that because his black belt is as far from legitimate as it could be. So if anyone would know about a black belt not making you good at anything, he would. But yeah, so it was this whole program of commando techniques that are secret and and then the added upsell of you're going to be able to become panty dropper in the flesh, and you'll walk in and command a room with your alpha masculinity.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. What's that website? This sounds pretty good.
Oh yeah. So anyway, I had to touch on it because it was just so comical, and I think.
But people don't know better.
That's what. And this is the reason I touch on it, because anytime I do, and
if you have had the chance to get informed, then you're an idiot. But there are lots of people who haven't had the chance to get informed.
Exactly. And so I used to use the term rubes because I happen to think that this particular guy has a incredible talent for fleecing rubes. He does a great job of getting to uninformed people. And so, anytime I've tried to criticize anything like this in the past, it's like, oh, you're a hater, oh, you're this, or you're that. I was like, man, dude, if you're just telling the truth about something, if you're just stating a simple fact, all of these programs are nonsense. They're these fake masculinity programs, these fake self-defense programs that are promulgated by snake oil salesmen that universally have no legitimate credentials or extremely specious credentials that were purchased or are extremely substandard, and they exist on the fringes. And the problem is if you don't call it out, like you said, people don't know. They're ignorant, and they'll see it and like, oh man, I can't get a date, and I want to be able to defend myself. Let me buy this program. Come on, man. Do a tiny bit of research.
When I was 13 years old, I was reading kung fu books talking about, you what was one? You find a rock and you punch it until you break your knuckles. Then you let your knuckles heal, and when they're healed, you go back to that rock and you punch it again until you break your knuckles. Then, after your knuckles heal, you go, and this repeats until you've got a deadly killing club of death. So that's actually an example of something that would probably work. There are karateka out there who've got deformed hands that can no longer write a letter. Yeah. But it's not good advice. But I'm out there as a 13-year-old going, should I do this? I really want to get good at my kung fu. Or, and then there's the ranges from there, which would actually probably kind of work, to stuff that would manifestly not work. Iron belt, qigong, deflect bullets with your chi.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to go on this whole lack of scientific literacy thing that we've touched on in the past again, but I mean, that is literally, if you don't understand the principle of if it can't be falsified, then it's not legitimate,
right,
then you're going to be vulnerable to this sort of thing. If somebody can convince you that it's too deadly to train, or you're going to have these results, but you can't ever actually use it, then you just have to say well, hey man, that's not science.
It's not falsifiable.
It's not, exactly. And it's hilarious that we live in an age where so many people are willing to embrace patently unscientific views while reading about them on their cell phone.
While using GPS.
While using GPS, and also, I remember I had a conversation. I lent a book to someone once, and it's one of my favorite books. I might as well just mention it because I think it's a great book recommendation. It's called The Lucifer Principle by Howard Bloom, which is it's a wonderful book. It will, if it doesn't change the way that you think, then you're a pretty astute person and you know a lot about the world. It definitely changed the way that I think on several topics.
What's it about?
Short answer is anthropology. It's basically a history of human civilization and how we actually come to behave the way we behave and how societies are formed. All this incredibly fascinating book. One of the few authors that I can tell you, when you pick up the book, half the book is footnotes. Right? It's scrupulously researched. And so anyway, I lent this book. It's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. Lent this book to someone and had a conversation with them about a week later. How do you like the book? Oh, no, it's not my thing. You can have it back. And I was like, I knew it. It challenged your worldview, right? Mm-hmm. Too much. I had a feeling. No, it's not that. I'm like, well, is there, can you, she's like, I just don't agree with what he's saying. I'm like, okay, well, let's pick a random thing in here and let's point out, can you point it out for me, like what is it? Because the footnotes are extensive, it's very scientifically supported. So can you point out one thing in here that you can give me the contrary scientifically supported position? And the response came, well, you know, I don't really put a lot of stock in science. I'm like, all right. Do you put a lot of stock in this building that you're standing in front of? Do you put a lot of stock in the cell phone that's in your pocket or the car that you drive? Because I guarantee you that you put a lot of stock in science, you know, in practice. You just don't want to admit it, right? So when it disagrees with some of your absurd views, then you'll say you don't put a lot of stock in science. But you'll absolutely put stock in science when you got to go to the doctor, when you got to get on a plane, when you need any of, like, we can give kind of literally every single thing that we do in our society is possible because of science. Come on, like, it's ridiculous. So anyway, we're gonna get called communists and whatever else. And
I don't think there's anybody left listening right now. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. That was an excellent podcast. Any podcast listeners I had are now, or YouTube viewers, they're now gone and they're posting angry comments at the bottom. And I'm now going to have to spend hours and hours arguing about it.
But if one of those people who would have otherwise gone and purchased some nonsense male alpha enhancement commando technique are going to look into it enough to realize that it's nonsense, and if that guy gets exposed for being the fraud that he and snake oil salesman and like just thief that he is, worth it.
All right. Yeah. Awesome, Rob. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.